Welcome back to Journey of Self-Awareness, your YouTube channel for personal growth and self-exploration. I'm your host, Thomas Theorem, and we've been discussing broad genres of spiritual practices, many of which involve the use of visualization or your imagination. And I thought maybe I should say a few words about visualization in spiritual practices. Of course, all the tantric practices involve visualization. That's what tantra means. So very many spiritual practices involve visualization and the use of imagination, and I suspect many of you may be asking, how does that work? I mean, how can using your imagination be effective as a means for achieving spiritual progress? After all, these things are just in your head. They're not objectively real things. So, as it turns out, visualization can powerfully shape our subjective realities. Even if that reality only exists within our own minds. It's visualization and imagination. It's more than simply forming mental images. It's an immersive experience. It's where you can imagine becoming one with a desired spiritual state. You can imagine becoming one with the divine. In Tibetan Buddhism, there's a popular practice known as Guru Yoga, in which you become one with your guru, with the deity. It could be a Yidam deity, it could be the Buddha himself. So, of course, while we're engaging in spiritual practices, we might as well call on the highest of the high to be of benefit to us, and visualization serves a whole range of purposes. For example, it can help us align our intentions with our highest ideals, as we'll discuss in a moment. So, visualization enables us to experience an entirely new state of being. It's along with all the attendant emotional responses and attitudes and even behaviors. So, this reminds me of a very famous concept in sociology. It was originally put forth in 1928 by a pair of sociologists, both of whom have the last name of Thomas. I suspect they were husband and wife, but at any rate, it's called the Thomas Theorem, and it says, if people define situations as real, then they're real in their consequences, which means that our perceptions of reality, whether they're accurate or not, shapes our actions and our behaviors. Even if something isn't objectively true, if we believe it to be true, it will have real-world effects, real-world consequences. It can change everything. It can change our perceptions of ourselves, change our perceptions of the world, it can change our behaviors. So our beliefs are very powerful. And when, or for example, when practitioners visualize offering the universe to the divine, or when we imagine giving everything over to the divine, including ourselves, we're essentially defining our relationship with the divine. And we're defining that relationship as something that is essentially real. And in a sense, our visualization and imagination helps us reify our relationships with the divine in an objective way. It's now this is true even though our offering may be entirely a mental image. The fact is that our belief that it's real will have profound and real consequences. In fact, this is how cognitive restructuring works in behavioral psychology and cognitive behavioral therapy, for example. By focusing on positive visualizations, we can reframe negative thoughts and beliefs and habits and restructure our cognitive maps. So visualization can inspire a whole new range of actions and reactions and habits that align more closely with the desired outcome, which in the case of spiritual growth includes our higher ideals as defined by the virtues that we're systematically cultivating in our spiritual practice through our daily lives. So in essence then, the Thomas Theorem helps explain how the power of visualization can reshape our perceptions of reality, even if that reality is entirely subjective and exists primarily within our own minds. Moreover, when our internal subjective states our subjective perceptions and beliefs are shared with others, then they can become social constructs that are adopted and maintained by a larger group or even a larger society. So even though they may not have any material basis, our practices that use visualization can not only significantly affect how we perceive the world and how we interact with others, our subsequent actions can powerfully affect those around us as well. So don't think that visualization and imagination in spiritual practices is some kind of hokey thing that isn't going to amount to anything, because it's extremely powerful. Visualization is also effective because we rarely question the reality of our subjective experiences, even though our thoughts and emotions may not be tangible objects in the external world. They're undoubtedly real to us, and we don't question them. We often just take them for granted and regard them as really real. So our internal subjectivities shape our perceptions, influence our behavior, and contribute to the overall sense of a self, and including the sense of a separate self, this egoic sense of a separate self that many of us are in the process of overcoming or transcending. So again, the main point is that visualization and imagination and spiritual techniques have a powerful impact on our subjective reality, and they can impact others. At the same time, our thoughts and emotions, that is our internal subjectivities, our internal mental experiences, are also shaped by the external environment, by the social environment. Depending on the culture within which we're raised, we may learn to fear certain things, desire certain outcomes, or experience certain emotions based on our interactions with others. Of course, I've talked about the power of social conditioning and the social construction of reality in previous videos, but this highlights the socially constructed nature of our internal experiences, which is to say that we're social beings, and we're not isolated from others around us or our perceptions of others around us. So I see this very often in politics in our divided country today, where disinformation and false beliefs are so rampant and can cause people to act in terrible ways. For example, people have shot up pizza shops and marched on the Capitol and attacked the police, and even marched with torches, those tiki torches, down in Charlottesville, chanting, "Jews will not replace us." And these are just a few examples. There's many, many more. And I think that and I'm afraid to say that we're probably going to see many more examples in the years to come. So another example, there was just a bomb threat at our local high school the other day, and they had to lock the whole place down, and students were having anxiety attacks and extremely fearful of what might be transpiring, even though there was no bomb and it didn't amount to anything serious in the end. So these kinds of acts happen when people believe that something is true, regardless of its factual accuracy. It could be completely false, but when they act as if it were true, our false beliefs can have devastating consequences, and they can lead to harmful behaviors, even when it's a false belief that's based entirely on hearsay or disinformation in our media, or the conspiracy theories, which are also seem to be rampant these days. And in many of these examples that I've mentioned and other ones, false beliefs about political opponents, the government, or specific groups of people have fueled violence and division, hate. People in the public eye are sometimes dehumanizing others with their speech. So I'm mentioning this because I want to remind us of the importance of critical thinking, of fact-checking, and of open dialogue in a democratic society. But these examples also serve to remind us of the critical importance of becoming committed to the truth. We have to remember that every spiritual tradition and religious tradition around the world places a premium on truth. And we need to be truth seekers. We need to be fearless truth seekers. And we need to be not only critical of others, but we also need to be self-critical of our own beliefs. And part of a spiritual practice is getting our own house in order and interrogating the factual accuracy of our own beliefs. Of course, these examples also demonstrate that our beliefs and our conceptual frameworks and cognitive structures can have a tremendous impact on our thoughts and our emotions and our perceptions, not only of ourselves and the external world, but on others, and it helps explain the power of spiritual practice. When we believe in the efficacy, the effectiveness of our spiritual practices, that is, when we have faith, even lacking empirical evidence one way or the other, our practices will have profound effects, and they will profoundly impact our lives, and they'll positively impact the lives of those around us. I should also note that spiritual practices often involve techniques for changing negative thought patterns and cultivating positive beliefs. After all, we're engaging in a spiritual practice to deliberately train our minds and our emotional reactions, and so very many spiritual practices focus on managing our emotions and cultivating inner peace, or calm abiding, which is receptive to self-reflection and introspection. So visualization is a way then of transforming our inner consciousness, and this can even affect our physiology, our endocrine systems, the hormonal systems in our bodies. For example, when we see something that we perceive as being extremely threatening, we can go into a fight-flight response and have maybe even go into having an anxiety attack as a result of it. But our bodies will become flooded with stress hormones like cortisol and inflammatory proteins and so on. that causes all the familiar physiological reactions, the racing heart, the rapid breathing, sweaty palms, the whole thing. So we have to realize that there is a very intimate connection between our minds and our bodies. And so if we visualize being in a serene and peaceful place, the body and the mind will often respond as if that visualization were real, which can lead to calming effects, and visualizations can produce all kinds of tangible physiological and emotional changes. I could say here too that neurologists and brain scientists have become more interested in the effects of meditation and mindfulness on the morphology of the brain, that is, the size and shape of different regions of the brain, and they've been taking long-term meditators and putting them in functional magnetic resonance imaging machines like MRIs, and actually mapping these differences rather systematically. So long-term meditators are actually changing the structure of their minds, of their brains. So visualizations can produce these kinds of physiological changes in our body, and very often our minds and our hormonal systems don't differentiate between real and vividly imagined experiences. So the neural pathways that are activated by visualization can indeed trigger similar bodily responses as the actual events. This is another example of how visualization and imagination can have profound impacts on our lives. Our beliefs and our spiritual practices help us to recognize, and internalize new patterns that create a strong foundation for spiritual growth and for spiritual qualities to flourish. So imagining oneself embodying qualities such as love and kindness and compassion or courage can reinforce those virtues within us and make them more accessible in our daily lives. Our beliefs can influence our actions, and for example, belief in a higher power can motivate us to engage in acts of kindness and selfless service toward others. So what I'm trying to say is that the power of visualization and imagination lies in their ability to reprogram the mind and to create new possibilities and to actualize our spiritual qualities. Spiritual practices, as I keep saying, they train the mind. They lead to positive transformation and prepare the inner landscapes for genuine spiritual growth. When we use these practices consistently, they become more than just mere exercises. They become vehicles of transcendence, and they help us embody the higher states of consciousness that align our intentions more deeply with our spiritual aspirations, which, as I keep advocating, our aspirations should be aligned with the holy virtues: patience, loving kindness, compassion, gratitude, forbearance, humility, all of the things we've talked about over the last 2 years now. So my warning to you is to not underestimate the power of visualization and spiritual practices to fundamentally alter our perceptions of reality and our perceptions of ourselves. They change ourselves, they change our thinking, and they change our behavior and our emotional reactions, and they change how we see the world and everyone around us. And when we focus our intentions on becoming good and better persons by integrating the holy virtues into our daily lives, and when we authentically live morally upstanding lives, based on compassion and kindness and respect for others, then our spiritual practices will definitely bring about positive changes in our lives. That's how we stay on the path, and that's how we make sure that we're heading in the right direction, is by focusing on good and proper conduct, and by integrating the virtues into our lives on a daily basis. Well, that's all for today. I don't want to end on such a serious note, but I'd like to thank you for watching, and please support the channel by telling others about us and by subscribing so you don't miss out on future videos when we're going to be learning about purification practices and cleansing negative karma and more. So be sure to keep an eye out for those videos, and in the meantime, please be at peace and remain mindful. Bye-bye.